All right. Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. I'm your host, Adam Patrick. I'm the editor and lead writer for thevikingage.com. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like this video. And if you have already, we appreciate for that. And also make sure to follow the Viking Age on Twitter and Facebook. I am here joined, as always, by my co-host Chris Schad, who writes for us here at the Viking Age, as well as Zone Coverage and Bring Me the News. I don't have any fun facts or trivia or questions today, Chris. We're just going to get right into it because there's been something that's been bothering me for about the last 24 hours, and it has to do with some comments that aren't even recent from Vikings GM Kwesi Adolfo Mensa, but now they're, apparently controversial. So, in an interview that was published on July 22nd, it is now July 28th, so almost a week ago. Vikings GM Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah told USA Today's Jory Epstein that Minnesota has a good quarterback in Kirk Cousins, but they don't have Tom Brady and they don't have Patrick Mahomes. He's not breaking any news here. They don't. But then on Wednesday, these comments were picked up by numerous outlets like Pro Football Talk, NFL.com, the New York Post, the Pat McAfee Show, and they were twisted to make it seem like Adolfo Menso was bashing Cousins and that uh, the Vikings' new GM is doing a poor job of establishing the new culture for the Vikings with these controversial comments that he said. My question for you, Chris, today is: are Adolfo Mensa's comments about Cousins as outrageous as some are making them out to be?
Well, welcome to training camp, everyone. That's pretty much what's going on here. Sometimes you talk about the fourth string right guard, and other times you talk about what your general manager said about your quarterback 5 months ago, or actually it would have been 3, but Minnesota math, who cares?
Yeah.
He didn't say anything wrong. Like that's the thing. If this is any other quarterback in the league, it's probably a story, but because if it's Kirk Cousins, he's like one of the biggest lightning rods in the league. Like everybody's got an opinion on Kirk Cousins. It's basically like Kwesi went out with a kite and flew, in the middle of a lightning storm, and now he's Ben Franklin. Like that was a terrible analogy, and I couldn't spit it out, but like it's just that's what he did. It's like Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl. Like he's holding the last like lightning rod up and just like getting struck by lightning. Like that is basically what the comment was, but it's not his fault. Like he's sitting there going like, I probably shouldn't have said it, whatever. And it's just the way that it's framed and the who it's after and all these things. It's just a perfect storm that really got everybody going. So he didn't bash Kirk Cousins. He called him good. If he went out there and been like, man, this guy's not Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, he freaking sucks. Like, then we have a problem. But because he's just like, hey, we have a really good quarterback, but he's not one of the two best in the league, which is basically what people like you and I have said ever since this show started back in February. So I don't think he said anything wrong. People are just looking for anything they can say, and I don't know. Maybe Baron Corbin will smash Pat McAfee's face in on Saturday night at SummerSlam. But
Kirk Cousins will be the special. He'll run in and cause a distraction for Pat McAfee.
Kwesi through the crowd, man. Just
yeah, it's annoying because training camp is going on right now, and we should be talking about that first. But I felt like this needed to be cleared out of the way because it just has dominated the Vikings headlines way too much than it should have. Yeah, he didn't say anything that was false. He didn't say anything inflammatory. He said Kirk Cousins is not arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play in the NFL, and he said that he's not, arguably the greatest quarterback in the league right now. He's not like breaking any news here, and like if people think Kirk Cousins' ego is so fragile that something like that's gonna hurt his chances to be successful in 2022, then he wasn't gonna be successful anyways. Um, but and Kirk Cousins was asked about it today. He says not too concerning. Apparently, I think Judd Zolgad reported that Kwesi and Kirk met for a little bit to like clear the air or whatever, so Kwesi can be like, dude, like that's not even close to what I meant. Whatever's being spewed out there has nothing to do with what I was talking about. So they're trying to fix that. And like you said, you kind of mentioned it where Kwesi, he's learning, he's new GM, he's got to kind of know who he's dealing with and what he's dealing with. Because saying something about Kirk Cousins is a lot different than if he said it about Jimmy Garoppolo or Baker Mayfield, or maybe not Baker Mayfield. People would spin that out of control as well. But like, you can't say this about Kirk Cousins because this is what's going to happen. This is a week later after these comments came out, and now they're just on fire. I think it was a little influenced by I always feel like once Pro Football Talk picks something up, then just like people are just like, oh, that must be significant, and then just people just run with it because this was not like this came out a week ago. This was an article that was
Yeah.
published a week ago. And now, like on Wednesday, because someone else wrote something about it, it became a big deal, which it still shouldn't have because it's not like he changed anything that he said. He did say, I believe he talked to Paul Allen or something the other day and said, like, probably, said it the wrong way or shouldn't have said it the way that I did, and he's gonna learn for the future. But
There's not an earthquake in Rochester, by the way. I just bumped my table like a klutz, but go on.
But yeah, like it's just disappointing because training camp just began. There's stuff to talk about, and we got to sit here and talk about Kirk Cousins again and it doesn't even really have to do with anything that Kirk Cousins did or said. It's just because other people want to talk about him because they know that he's an engagement lightning rod. And hopefully Kwesi can learn from this and just not talk about Kirk Cousins ever again.
You know the crusty meme where it's like I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud or whatever it is? That's basically what this is. Like everybody knows it, but when you say it to anybody like a national media member, it's going to get picked up. And honestly, I didn't even know this article existed until Kwesi
Right.
took the podium on Tuesday because he was asked about it. He was asked about going full Rams and everything else. And like honestly, like
I read it and I thought it was boring.
right.
I
Yeah.
was like, there's
Look
nothing
at what
here.
he said. I mean, he didn't say much. He just said, "Hey, we don't have Tom Brady. We don't have Patrick Mahomes. You need one of those guys, but it's really hard to get one of those guys." That was it. It was nothing. Like, he didn't, like you said, he didn't say Kirk Cousins or Tom Brady is so much better than Kirk Cousins. I wish we could have traded for him. Like, you look back at everything, he was basically just saying why they gave Kirk Cousins that extension. He was basically saying, "Hey, you know, there weren't any available options out there. Russell Wilson went for way more assets than the Vikings had. Deshaun Watson went for way more assets than the Vikings had. And he had that off the field thing, obviously. Did you really want to trade for Matt Ryan? Did you really want to trade for Carson Wentz? Did Jimmy Garoppolo with a bad shoulder? That would have went over well. Yeah, the sign Marcus Mariota and draft Malik Willis. How would that have turned out? Like this was the best option available looking back at it in hindsight. And that's what he was saying. He just said, with this team, it doesn't make sense to push all our chips into the table and go full Rams, which that was apparently another lightning storm comments. But Rick Spielman's probably sitting somewhere drinking a beer, being like, "Yep, have fun with that."
Well, this is why he never said anything. This is why he would always have press conferences, and you would literally learn nothing about the team because he would just give you general statements, cliches, the whole thing, because he did not want to be in the headlines. Where Mike Zimmer was different. He'd give you honest answers, and he would be in the headlines sometimes. But Rick Spielman was hardly ever, unless he gave the dreaded words that we have no intention of doing this, and everyone's like, "Oh, we know you do."
Oh, you're doing it. I just hope he doesn't.
Okay, go ahead.
I just hope he doesn't hold back now because he said, "Yeah, I should say less."
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, that was one of the worst parts of the last regime is that they said nothing at all.
Yeah.
And now, maybe this is going to be a thing where people talk to him and it's just like, no, I'm not giving anything after that. That was ridiculous. I was basically dragged through the mud. But we'll see.
That's kind of been some of the problems of Kirk Cousins' career where people have just been kind of walking on eggshells because they don't want to like disrupt his mental, well-being or whatever. When it's like, maybe the better philosophy is to like hold him accountable and be more real with him. Don't be fake to his face and let him know, hey, we think you're a good quarterback. We know you're not the best. Can you be the best maybe one day?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But right now, you're not. And too many teams in the past have been like, "Oh, it's okay, Kirk. You'll be okay. We'll get you Sean Mannion. We'll get your best friend, so you can have a buddy in the quarterback room."
It's okay, Kirk. I would have made that throw too.
Where Quasey's like, "Listen, he's not the best quarterback. He- Everyone knows it. Let's stop ignoring it." And he realized, maybe he shouldn't have said that, but I like the honesty from Quasey. And at the same time, we always ask these GMs and coaches and even players to be honest and like just not give us boring answers to everything. This happens all the time. The one time people do, people turn, twist words and make it seem like they're saying something they're not. Hey, guess what? Myself included. Maybe you sometimes when you're writing, um, but that's just how it is. So that's part of the reason why GMs and coaches aren't really they don't give much details to their thoughts about certain things because this happens. But that's all I got on this. I just wanted to get this out of here and be done with it. I don't want to talk about it ever again. I'm sure that's not going to be
Oh, you know
possible
you will
as
though.
long as Kirk Cousins is on the team. It's gonna come up in the next offseason for sure
The
when they're
first
like, "What?
pick he throws, people are gonna whip out this article like his own GM saw this coming.
Tom Brady wouldn't have done that." Yeah. So that's all I got to say on this. Do you have anything else? Oh, I think I had another question actually about it. Um, do you? What about did these comments that Quasey had? Do you think that it's more of an indication that maybe the Vikings wanted to trade Kirk Cousins this past offseason, but ownership was kind of like, "We're not going to do that. You need to keep him here." And like you mentioned, there might not have been good enough offers out there, but it seems like these you wouldn't you wouldn't say this about a quarterback maybe that you wanted to keep, uh, and that you would not be open to trading. So are these comments maybe more of an indication of that?
I think they looked into it. 100%. There were reports that
Oh,
they
they said
looked
they did.
into
They
it.
said they did.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield was like, I thought I was going to Minnesota. Like he's legit on the record saying that.
Yeah.
So I think they looked into it, and Quasey prides himself on like overturning all the stones, like looking at all situations. So I'm sure he made calls about Kirk Cousins, but I mean, like I said, what were you going to do that was going to be an immediate upgrade that you had the means to do? Like you couldn't make a trade for a blockbuster quarterback. You couldn't. I mean, anybody you signed would have been worse than Cousins. Like some of the trades you would have made, you would have been getting a quarterback worse than Cousins. So yeah, the whole thing is just it's so weird, man. But let's play some games, man.
Hey,
It's so funny you called this because you're just like training camp will start and we'll be like, all right, I'm bored of this. Let's get to the preseason. All right, the preseason games, we're done with that. Let's get some real games, man. Like we're already sick of training camp. It's amazing.
it's day 2. They haven't even
They
put
haven't
the
even
pads
put
up.
on pads yet. We're like, get this shit over with.
Yeah. All right. Hey, speaking of training camp started for the Vikings. Day 1 was on Wednesday. Day 2 was today. They have not put on pads. I believe their first padded practice will be Saturday, I want to say. Um, and that'll be, it might be in US Bank Stadium actually, or it's Friday. I think Friday, isn't it? US
Yeah,
Bank
they're
Stadium.
going Friday.
Yeah.
So
So, some highlights so far. We see that Jesse Davis is working as the starting right guard, not Chris Reed, not Ed Ingram. That could change in the future. Rookie safety Lewis Seen is working with the second team defense. So Cameron Bynum's getting the reps with the first team. Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion are splitting number 2 quarterback reps, which is a great sign for Kellen Mond. And Jordan Hicks has missed both days of training camp due to a non-COVID illness, which is good, I guess. And Andrew Booth Jr., the Vikings corner, had arguably the play of the day on Wednesday when he picked off a Kirk Cousins pass, and on today, on day 2, on Thursday, he had a bunch of moments where he was kind of getting in the faces of some Vikings receivers and locking down guys like Justin Jefferson and stuff. So Andrew Booth is certainly making a name for himself early on in training camp. It is day 2, so let's not get too overexcited. But has anything surprised you so far about maybe what the Vikings are doing with their depth chart or anything else so far in 2 days of training camp?
Kind of the offensive line's a little bit weird that Davis is at right guard, but the way it looks, they want Ed Ingram to step up and take that role.
Yeah.
I mean, none of the rookies were going to get starting jobs out of the gate. I
No.
don't think that was going to happen at all. But I do think that, this regime does want everybody to have a role. And if a rookie is ready, they're going to, we're not going to see Justin Jefferson benched for the first 2 games like we did a couple years ago because
No.
he's got to earn his spot. There is no preseason. No, if he's ready, he's ready. So,
Mhm.
I wasn't really terribly surprised. I mean, it's 2 days into practice. Just seeing the Andrew Booth interview, dude looks like a cornerback one. Like he's big, he's kind of jacked. Like Cameron Dantzler, you look at him and you think he's like a high school corner because he's so skinny. But I'm excited about Andrew Booth. I think that's the one thing that I can take away is, but we don't have much to go off of. But hey,
I mean, yeah, he's got to stay healthy. They're gonna put the
yeah,
pads on. Things are gonna get more physical. That's when figure out if he's gonna be ready for the season or not. But I would say that Booth or Dantzler is a much better option as a number 4 corner than Chris Boyd or Harrison Hand or some of the other guys that they have back there. Because I'm assuming it's gonna be Peterson number 1, Shannon Sullivan will be the nickel guy, and then it'll be either Dantzler or Booth for the 3 job. And Dantzler's been making plays too. I guess he was making some plays on going against Thielen today in practice as well. That's what some of the reports were saying. So it's going to be a pretty heated competition so far, but it's a really good sign for the Vikings defense, who I believe was like 28th against the pass last year. Um, so they need some help in the secondary, and Booth can do that. I think ESPN's Jordan Reed, formerly of the Viking Age, said that the Vikings are going to love Andrew Booth. And he would, like we've mentioned in the past, he was graded as a first round prospects. Just some injuries. I don't think he tested at the combine,
he
which
didn't.
which probably would have helped him if he
Mhm.
was able to do that, and he probably would have gone in the first round. But the Vikings got him. He could be a starter. He could be a great depth guy. But right now, it looks like the depth for the Vikings cornerbacks is a lot better than we thought it was going in. It's only day 2. As far as the offensive line goes, I was interested today to see if anyone else would maybe get a shot if they're rotating people, right guard. But it seems like Jesse Davis is getting a shot again. We'll see. It'll be different too when they put pads on. And maybe if injuries happen there, we'll see what happens. But yeah, all the other ones, it kind of makes you open your eyes and realize that maybe it wasn't Mike Zimmer that was so against rookies. It's just the NFL. These guys are young; they need time to get up to the speed of the NFL. And unless it's just like a quarterback who is coming in, they have no other quarterbacks. Usually, this is how things go for rookies, where they start with the second team and they have to work their way up to get some playing time, which can easily happen. A couple of these guys make some plays in the preseason or training camp, and they're right in the running for a starting job. So I'm not too worried about any of those right now. But speaking of camp battles, what battle do you think will be the closest in training camp this summer?
Okay, so we already talked about the cornerback position and the safeties. So I mean, that's probably my answer, but I'll try and think of something else. How about defensive tackle? Because I
Oh,
I think Dalvin Tomlinson's pretty entrenched. I think Harrison Phillips is pretty entrenched there too. Armin Watts against Jalen Twyman. I wrote about Jalen Twyman at at zone coverage this week,
mhm,
and he's my favorite for Mr. Mankato. The guy had 11 sacks in his sophomore season at Pittsburgh. Opted out in 2020 to get prepared for the draft. Had this
mhm.
bad workout. Then he gets shot 4 times. Now he's back. I saw a tweet today saying it's a new strip writer. I got to get his name down. I apologize for that.
Yep,
But
yep. I know who you're
just
talking
said
about.
that he was blowing past Ezra Cleveland. And he said Cleveland, held his own against Dalvin Tomlinson earlier. So, I mean, they need an interior guy that can pass rush. And I think if that winds up happening where Twyman steps up, or maybe even Armon Watts has another level to him, I think the defense will be that much better. And you'll have another guy that can get to the quarterback, assuming Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter stay healthy.
The dude's name is Connor Leach.
Okay.
I think he's real, and I think he works for the Star Tribune.
I'm not 100% sure either.
Right. There's no
check mark or anything.
There's no check mark. It seems like he just created his account. So let's be careful because there many people have been duped by, especially in the Vikings world. I think even Paul Allen's been duped a couple times by some of the fake accounts in Vikings Twitter. So I think I quote tweeted him or something just about him stopping Jefferson, and some of the stuff he's tweeting about seems to fall in line with what some of the other people are tweeting about. So it kind of makes sense. So Connor, if you're real, I'm sorry, but I just have to question you right now. But yeah, I think overall it seems like things aren't going terribly for the Vikings. You know, what Jordan Hicks is out with that illness. That's really the only question mark. But other than that, I think guys are making plays. Kirk Cousins is being told what to do. He's like, I think he told in his press conference today that, you know, Kevin O'Connell told him to make a specific throw. Like he told him, make the throw, like no matter what. Like if he's not open, make the throw. And don't go further in your progressions. Just make the throw. And that's what he has to do. He just gotta feel confident, and just take those chances. And the more he does that, hopefully, the more he will do that during the season, and he'll have more performances like he did against the Packers in US Bank Stadium last year. But other than that, like it's the first 2 days. It's non-padded practice at training camp. There isn't a whole lot going on. I feel like once the pads get on, there will be more interesting things to talk about. I guess Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter are moving all over the place. So that's kind of exciting. I just think it's still a lot of excitement, and the vibe feels good with Kevin O'Connell. I don't know if you saw the mic'd up that he had. I think it was on like NFL Network or something. And it's from OTAs, and he's just like going around cracking jokes and everything, and it's just like totally different than Mike Zimmer, which you would expect. Also, would like to note that former Vikings co-defensive coordinator Adam Zimmer is now a member of the Cincinnati Bengals staff as an offensive analyst. Yes, that is correct. Offensive. So he's on the offensive staff of the Bengals now. He did so well for the Vikings as their co-defensive coordinator. Sorry, Andre Patterson, that he is now on the offensive side of the ball with the Bengals. So that worked out really well.
Probably knows a lot about good offense after watching him torch his defense, but
yeah,
is that too far?
Too soon.
Too soon.
But yesterday, Justin Jefferson talked to the media and about a variety of subjects. One of them was his potential contract next season, which many of us are predicting will be record-breaking because he has just exploded out of the gate in the NFL, and wide receivers are getting paid stupid money these days. But when he was asked about the possibility of his next contract, Justin Jefferson said the following. He said, quote, "I'll focus on the contract after the season, but the main thing is just reaching that goal, which I believe he talked about was becoming the best receiver in the NFL." And then he said, "But I'm not really too fond of money. I'm really just trying to get that goal of being the best receiver." So, Chris, what do you make of Jefferson's not too fond of money comment?
Well, that'll be used against him when he goes to the negotiating table. But
yeah.
You know, I like it though, because I mean, he says he wants to be the best receiver. That's his number one goal. If he's the best receiver, he's going to get the money. So maybe that's his attitude where, hey, I'm not too fond of money as my top goal. I want to be the best receiver because it's going to help our team win. And if that happens, I'm going to get the money. Like, I think that's what he meant when he said that. But, you know, us Viking fans are wired so differently when it comes to big money contracts where it's just like, yeah, we hear something like that, like, well, are you going to take a $2.5 million contract so you can play with Kirk then? No, he's not going to do that, because you know why? Because the NFLPA would lose their freaking minds if that happened. But
I think what you said is true, and that he's really just focused on becoming the best receiver, and he knows if he is, and he'll get paid, and that's not his main motivation. He's not motivated by money. He's motivated by being the best at his position. I do think it's interesting that you can also twist it and say, like, he's not too fond of money, and maybe that's an indication of, like, he's more concerned about winning, and if the Vikings don't win again this year, maybe he'll want out, and that's a legitimate question. Like, maybe he'll want to be in a different setting where he can win and get paid. Where, like, that's not his main focus is not money. His main focus might be being the best and winning. So I think that's something that, because he talked about going from LSU to the Vikings, and just it being much different because he's losing a lot more, and he just talked about how much he hates it, which is true for a lot of people, but it seems like it might bother him more than some others. So that's something I think, like, in the back of my mind, that I do worry about if the Vikings maybe don't get in the playoffs this year, is because we've seen guys, Debo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, just force their way out, and somebody's gonna. If Justin Jefferson says he wants out, the Vikings phones are gonna be just off the hook, blowing up. So that might be something to worry about. I don't want
the
to. I don't want
Bengals
to. I don't
cap
want to
guy would
get people
work
worried about
so much overtime trying to figure that out. Just like, hey man, we got to figure out how to get Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson on the same team. Figure it out.
I don't want people to worry about that, but it is a possibility. If the Vikings don't do well, it's a possibility that a lot of people could be gone if the Vikings don't do well. Not just Jefferson; it could be Dalvin Cook, Thielen, Kirk Cousins, Harrison Smith, Kendricks, all those guys.
Well, I think that's why there's a lot on the line this season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just, oh, well, if the Vikings go 6-11, like everybody's gone and we just reset and build around Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's not going to want to be around a full-blown rebuild. Like he's
in the
probably
prime
had
of his
enough
career.
Yeah, he's been losing enough at that point. He's probably just going to say, trade me so I can go play with Joe Burrow or somewhere else. Like, the Vikings have to win this season. And like I said, if the Vikings do finish 6-11 and Justin Jefferson might put up those stats, I mean, he's going to get the contract no matter what.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's another layer of hesitation there. Like, well, you're not really propelling us to like win, right? Like Tyreek Hill was on a Super Bowl champion team. Devontae Adams was on a team that probably should have went to the Super Bowl at some point.
Yeah.
Who else got traded? I'm forgetting one. You said Debo, but he didn't force his way out. He
wanted to get traded.
Yeah, he wanted to get traded.
Marquise Hollywood Brown got traded from the Ravens.
He's not good,
Cardinals. No, he's already hurt.
That's the funny part. He's just like, oh yeah, it was Greg Roman in the offense. Like somebody on Twitter, like just made this highlight reel of all his drops, like just right in the breadbasket. It's like, maybe it's not him. Maybe it's you, man. But pint-sized quarterback, pint-sized receiver.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was another. Oh, AJ Brown.
Oh yeah.
You know, the guy that the Vikings
drafted. They did win.
Smith.
Yeah.
Before.
So, I mean, but all those receivers were coveted. And the Titans were the number 1 seed last year, so it's not like they were a dumpster fire. So,
right.
I mean, you could put that out there. Yeah. So, I mean, when you think of it that way, if Justin Jefferson's on another team that's never over 500, people are going to be like, well, are you? This sounds so weird to say. Are you the problem? He's not. I can guarantee it. But I mean, people will ask that question. So I don't know, man. I mean, they have to win. And if they win, I think they'll keep Justin Jefferson and everything will be fine. But it's another reason why I think the Vikings kept Kirk Cousins. Because if they went, down a peg in quarterback, like, we're going to give you Marcus Mariota, and like Jefferson doesn't even come close to those numbers, not only is he going to be upset that the Vikings didn't win, he's going to be upset that he's not going to get that same contract that he would have if Kirk Cousins is there. And Kirk's putting up his stats mainly because he's throwing to Justin Jefferson. Like it all checks out.
No, for sure. Because Kirk is, this brings us back all the way back to our first topic, because Kirk is a good quarterback. He is not Tom Brady. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he's good. And he can get the ball to Justin Jefferson, which is what the Vikings need to do this year and hopefully in the future. But that's all I got today. Kind of short because even though training camp began, there's just, other than the Kirk Cousins controversy, the Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah controversy, there just still isn't a lot to talk about. Like, okay, go. What do
Can
you
we
got?
add one thing? I just
Okay,
thought
what?
of something
What?
because this is something I need to get off my chest.
Oh,
It
boy.
involves the Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles, but WWE announced that
Oh, yeah.
WrestleMania 40 will be held in the
In Philly.
lovely city of Philadelphia,
Outside in April.
which means that the Viking Stadium, which has been rumored to get a WrestleMania ever since it was built. That was one of the reasons, that was one of the selling points to get that building built because Lester
should.
Bagley mentioned himself.
It
They
should.
still don't have it. So it's complete garbage. I just have to go off. Like, I understand why you would want to go to Philadelphia because Philadelphia has a very rich wrestling history. It was the birthplace of ECW.
New York's right there. DC's right there.
Yep. I mean, but they always talk about like destination cities, and it's just like, you really want to go to Philadelphia?
No.
Like they ate crap off the streets when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like let's remind ourselves of that. They if this was WrestleMania 38 or 7, maybe Minnesota gets a Super Bowl, but a WrestleMania, but and I know there's a lot of people who don't care, but I mean, Minnesota's wrestling history is very rich too. I mean, Brock Lesnar's from Minnesota. Gable Stevenson, who's going to be making his way on there. You know, AEW has a lot of Minnesota. Yep, Ric Flair. Even like current wrestlers like Dante Martin, Darius Martin, Top Flight, and AEW. They're from Minnesota. Julia Hart is a Minnesotan. Gable Stevenson. Who else?
Legion of Doom.
Yes, yes. I was going to say Paul. He was their manager, though. I mean,
but Laurinaitis is from Minnesota, right?
He is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So,
yeah,
it's frustrating, but
it would be.
Whatever.
I feel like it'd be a great facility for that, and maybe with new people, new leadership in charge, it will be that way. Maybe Vince McMahon was just like, I don't want to have WrestleMania in Minnesota, and it could snow in April, but everyone would be like, it'll be indoors. Who cares? Because it's a great venue. So I don't know why. Like, it's not like, I don't feel like the Eagles Stadium is like this amazing venue. It was built probably over 10 years ago.
Yeah, and now they have those big ugly, like, it looks kind of like a corkscrew,
like
on
silos
top.
out on the outside.
Yeah, they're like wind turbines.
Yeah, people like walk up them instead of stairs.
No, they're on top of the scoreboard. They're like little, like, they look like little drill bits actually, and they spin around, and like that's powers like the jail cells or something. Probably. I don't know.
Powers the booze for Santa Claus when they need to feed that into the crowd noise.
One other story, and I didn't mention this during the Minneapolis Miracle, but I remember tailgating before the Miracle game, and we're just like, all right, if Philly, or if they win and they go to Philly, like, we'll go to Philly. And this guy just comes up out of nowhere. He's like, you don't want to do that, man. And we're like, what do you mean? He's like, no. Seriously, it's a gong show. Like, you know how most stadiums have ushers at the top of their stairs? Like, they have cops, full-blown cops at the top of their sections, so like they can arrest people. He's like, it's not fun. And then we saw what happened the following week, and we're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Pretty bad, but that Eagles fans will just call Vikings fans salty because they lost by that score. That I don't want to talk about.
I fully admit that I'm salty. That team should have went to the Super Bowl, and yet
lots of Nick Foles. Yeah,
it's not Eagles fan. It's not the Eagles' fault. It's the Vikings' fault. We're mad at we're more mad at our own team.
Yeah. All right. On Monday we should have a lot more to talk about. could have talked maybe about Kellen Mond today. I'm excited about his potential. Saw some clips of him and his throwing motion looks a little better. Looks a little less robotic, more fluid. Seemed like I think he said he worked on it in the offseason. I think he told Matthew Collar or something like that. So we will be back on Monday. Another episode, more training camp updates. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like this video and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And listen to the audio version of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, Chris and I will talk to you later.